好的，大家能看到我的屏幕吗 ？OK， 在我开始讲用英文和 Pape 教授对话之前呢，我想简单用中文给大家介绍一下 Pape 教授的背景。那我和 Pape 教授的共事始自于疫情之前，我们在哈佛辩论营的一次的共同的工作。那从那时候开始到现在，Pape 老师已经给数百位海域国际的学员进行了授课，他也是我们海域历史上最受大家欢迎的一位老师。大家如果有机会来听听 Pape 老师的课，就会意识到为什么他会吸引从小学2、3年级一直到成人的各个年龄段的学员。那因为今天呢，我们这个对话是用英文来进行的，那么大家如果提问的时候呢，也欢迎用中文来提问我们可以把它翻译成英文，但是主要的对话都是用英文进行的。如果今天在听的有一些是家长的话，也欢迎你们的孩子一起来参加。Okay, so tonight's the topic is speech, debate, and writing, building skills, unlocking future. And we're going to discuss a variety of topics. We probably won't be able to cover every topic in detail, and would love to open the floor to answer questions from our parents and students. Okay, my computer is frozen, so let me try to move my slides. Okay. I have had the pleasure working with Professor Pape since a summer camp at Harvard University, where he was the course coordinator and instructor for public speaking and debate. Professor Pape has over 25 years experience teaching K-12 programs, and also nearly 25 years teaching at the college level of a variety of communication class, from media literacy to creative writing, to public speaking, to debate. He was also the National Debate Championship college coach for all of the last 5 years. And as I mentioned earlier in Mandarin, he has been acting as the curriculum coordinator for Harvard debate summer programs in public speaking and argumentation. He has been the tap room director for the Great Communication Debate Championship, and he has acted as tournament official for the NSDA. Now he has led, officiated, or coached at a long list of competitions, which you can see on the screen. A little bit about myself. I wrote this in Mandarin. I came to the States 20-some years ago to pursue my MBA degree. When I first came to the country, I didn't know anybody. And I didn't have any work experience for a Fortune 500 company. So I was a rookie. And when I started my first job at IBM, I had a huge learning curve. But by the time I became an executive at IBM, leading over 400 professionals located in over 100 countries, and in charge of over $10 billion budget every year for IBM, at that moment, I realized the most critical success factors for me personally was communication. The ability to communicate with people from different cultural background, people from different levels, managing the effective communication with my boss, or lateral with my colleagues, or managing my own team. I could not survive, not to mention thrive, in corporate America without effective communication skills. And I wanted to quote one of the NSDA alumni, Quanlan Chaw's own words. He said, "Speech and debate taught me about leadership, teamwork, humility, and empathy. But most importantly, speech and debate give me the ability to build meaningful connections and lasting friendships. After he graduated from college, he joined Boeing's leadership development program. I won't read everybody points here, but as you can gather, public speaking and debate will not only improve your communication skills, but also help build robust analytic capabilities and boost your self-confidence. One thing I can guarantee you that for someone who are well-trained with public speaking and debate skills, oftentimes in corporate America or in college or during the college interview process, you will not be surprised that people is going to ask you, have you been trained as a debater? Because they're going to see the difference. Right? And you can read what's in the screen, what Charles has learned from practicing speech and debate, and what he has learned through that experience about leadership skills. Now, I steal this graphics from NSDA official website. And apparently they have done some study. Right? Based on the study, after you participated in speech and debate lessons or practice, you improve or increase your analytic skills by 87%. You increase your reading test score by 36%. You have 15% higher self-esteem. Now they have some statistics for decades, based on decades of data. The students' enrollment at top colleges, those who have participated in NSDA or as NSDA members, I should say, has 5 times higher chance of getting into top 10 colleges. And about a 5 times higher chance to get into top 25 colleges. About twice the chance to get into top 50 colleges. Now, what they did not mention here, I can draw that from my personal experience. I should say my elder daughter's experience, that public speaking skills and debate skills really helped her to stand out during the college application process, interview process, and most importantly, the merit-based Fulbright scholarship. At the end of the day, your higher GPA and your community service leadership may get you through the door or get you 1 foot into the door, right? But every round of the competition to get to the top finalist for a merit-based leadership program, it all comes down to the way you communicate verbally. And some of those finalist process require you to do a team debate, a group debate. But every single one of them will involve multiple interviews and a variety of ways of testing your communication skill. I would love you to tell the audience why learning speech and debate is important for academic success and career success.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Yes, I'm pleased to talk a little bit about this. As you saw from the earlier slides, there is a tremendous correlation between speech and debate skills and academic success. Having worked with students both in the United States as well as living and taking their classes in China, we certainly can see a rapid growth in their reading and writing ability in English. It also gives you great exposure to different academic sources and the ability to evaluate different kinds of sources and what is meaningful as accepted evidence, both in academic debate as well as in politics and in different other contexts. What is accepted evidence in one context is not necessarily going to be accepted in another. And it's important for debaters to be able to make clear evaluations of those sources. So we spend considerable time talking about and evaluating source quality. And of course, we need to emphasize the 5 C's of 21st century learning. And all of these come through in speech and debate. Your critical thinking skills are emphasized, your creativity, which in my creative writing classes are linked back to your ability to make quality arguments, as well as to be able to express yourself creatively in a variety of different ways, your ability to communicate, collaborate, and also your character, ethics, your values are also represented when you are debating. Your natural instincts come through in the heat of the moment of a debate round. And it tells me a lot about your character, how you react, and how you approach your competitor and judges in an academic debating context.
And could you also elaborate on the 5 effective communication skills?
Absolutely. We have clarity, consistency, creativity, which I think all really do go together. I'll start with clarity first. In a debate round, you have to be incredibly clear with your language use and with your evidence and your argumentation. I emphasize in my debate classes also the ability to have and uphold a value and a value statement that's embedded within the arguments, and not enough debate teachers are willing to do that. That means the consistency has to be there. You have to be intellectually consistent with your argumentation in order to be effective. You cannot simply make one claim in one moment and a competing claim in another and not see that those consistent variables have to go together. And they have to be clear for the audience as well as for the critics. There is also a connection to creativity. You have to be able to think creatively to come up with new positions, new arguments, and new ideas during a debate round. And this is a very transferable skill from debate rounds into your classes. Your academic success will also come through in your ability to be clear, consistent, and creative. But of course, debate emphasizes content. We have to have good arguments, quality contentions that are supportable by evidence, and we have to be able to compete against other arguments that our opponents are making. And so the content, the deliverable content in a debate round is, of course, very, very important. And then I think the connections are critical. I know Mr. Harrison will be talking about this more in just a moment, but your careers, your college connections can be made through speech and debate. There are so many people who are successful high school debaters who then become quality students at Harvard or Yale or Dartmouth or other competing schools. Some of the top schools in the entire country are debaters. And they represent not only quality debates in their schools, but those connections carry with you. So you not only get admission to an excellent school, but then you also have the work connections, because so many employers have that connection with debate, and that carries with them into their careers and makes them successful communicators also. It's almost a fraternity of sorts. When you have competed in speech and debate, you make valuable connections. And the NSDA allows you to have not only national, but international connections, because we have chapters in a variety of different countries. And so those connections, both in the United States as well as internationally, become really important. And the ability for you to connect with folks in admissions as well as in future workplaces will only benefit you down the line.
And that's a great segue into the next topic about why communication skills or learning speech and debate is so critical to your career success. And here's my own observation, and also based on my younger daughter's feedback, my elder daughter did not have the opportunity to take your class, but my younger one, Michelle, had the opportunity. And she told me that this is her most favorite class and teacher. And I think here's why. Our class, the design of our class is slightly different from many great programs offered by other institutions. In that we really try to build a strong foundation for those 5C skills instead of focusing too soon on competitive techniques. Those are important, don't take me wrong, but I think the reason a lot of parents and students are attracted to our curriculum is because they have observed, number one, Professor Pape had the breadth and depth of what you can expect from a college professor, right? From history to philosophy to politics, etc., etc. So that breadth and depth combined with many years of experience teaching students from all backgrounds and age groups made the class very adaptive to different type of students. Actually, we want to talk a little bit about the new SAT format and its connection. It's a correlation with debate. Dino, do you want to take that one?
Sure. One of the things that you will definitely improve with regard to debate is your vocabulary. And you will learn a wide range of different, not only different complex and dynamic language skills, but you also have to be able to apply those within context. You can't use them in a debate round without understanding what its impact is on the round and in context with the greater argument. So you're going to expand and grow your vocabulary very rapidly. Related to this is the reading that you do, the research that you do. One of the things that you will learn to do very quickly as a debater is to read high-end research, and you'll do so quite rapidly because you have to be able to understand the meaning of the content as quickly as you can, especially when you're preparing for or in the midst of a debate round. So you learn the vocabulary and you learn to apply that vocabulary incredibly quickly. So you read a little bit more quickly, you have greater comprehension skills. And if you don't have those comprehension skills, that will be tested in the debate round because your opponent or even your judge or critics or coaches will say, tell me what that word means. You're using that word, but do you really understand what it is in context and what it actually means in this case? You have to have evidence-based interpretations, and we have to use accepted quality evidence. Right now, unfortunately, in my view, and I think in many other academics' views, we have a great many contentious debates about what constitutes quality evidence. I have seen entirely too many situations where the citizens of the United States will be reading something that is completely false, that is contradictory to what the science tells us, and yet still believes that without understanding the evidence within context. And so it's really important that you recognize the quality of the sources, the vocabulary that you're going to be using, and that it has to be tested. And that's the biggest difference. Argument from ignorance will always be taken out by quality arguments with evidence that supports them, because you have to have good ground in your debate in order to be effective debaters. And anything that has limited latitude of acceptance will immediately be rejected in favor of better quality evidence. So we have to have that evidence that supports your position, even while you're learning excellent logic skills. And then the mathematics portion of the SAT, you're looking at more word-based problems. So again, vocabulary and language is connected with the mathematics. Think mathematical proofs is another way to process that. And then the essay. You do have the essay, and that's all about critical thinking, argumentation, and evidence. I had one student who told me that the SAT essay was really about impromptu written down. And impromptu is one of the events that you will practice. If you have to come up with things spontaneously, your ideas spontaneously, yet be able to craft effective arguments and use accepted vocabulary in a creative and engaging way, you will write an outstanding essay. And that will set you apart from those who are not as successful at writing, especially writing something in a spontaneous way, because you can't pre-prepare for that. You don't know what you're going to be asked until you're seated for the exam.
Talking about the college admissions, I mentioned earlier that we have just gone through that process. My own daughter have gone through a lot of interviews. And even though she really hasn't gone through a very rigorous training on public speaking and debate, but with the limited exposure she had, and several times her interviewer actually asked her, said, were you trained to be a public speaker? So the advantage in the admissions process, in particular for those competitive scholarship applications and interview process, is quite obvious in my own experience. But I will let Dino to tell us more about that.
Yeah, I've found that there's a tremendous advantage in the admissions process if you have speech and debate skills. Being a member of or having competed in tournaments that are sponsored by the National Speech and Debate Association. And many of the most prominent tournaments in the country use the National Speech and Debate Association rules. And the biggest and most competitive of those schools attend those national competitions. So you have the advantage not only in admissions because you set yourselves apart from others who have not had to go through that competitive and rigorous process, but you also set yourself apart for being able to compete internationally. And some of you may have this interest. We have World Schools Debate and we have Model United Nations. And even the public forum debate is practiced in many countries, including in China. But many countries around the globe will focus on Model United Nations and World Schools Debate. And you have the opportunity to enter international competitions and compete against others who are at your skill level, but coming from other academic institutions. That ability to compete on a wider stage, on a bigger stage with others is vitally important to your future success. By the way, you do not have to debate in college. If you want to, that's fantastic. And there are many institutions that will even offer you scholarships if you will do debate in college. But to get into the college and to set yourself apart and even earn some pre-scholarships with just having the background, not even dedicating yourself in college, still gives you a distinctive advantage. So don't feel like you must debate in college, although certainly you would be welcome to, and you could join a pretty elite group of college debaters as a part of this process. But it's not a requirement that you have to do that. Of course, there's great exposure to the United States culture and other cultures from around the world. And many different formats of debate are going to introduce you to different cultures, different styles. We do have a fairly aggressive style of debate in the United States, and some formats more than others, but nevertheless, you will find that the competitiveness in the United States when it comes to debate and the exposure to United States culture is going to have great value for you. It definitely improves your interview skills. I had the opportunity to work with Michelle on her skills and ask her some questions. And at one point, we hit a real breakthrough in doing just practice interviews one-on-one as if she were approaching a panel. As a college faculty member, I have served on admissions scholarship essays boards. So I have read, critiqued, and scored essays that lead to college scholarships. And I have also been a part of interview panels where faculty from the institution interview students, prospective students, on panels in order to decide whether or not they should receive the highest scholarship awards. So it definitely improves the interview skills. You see the confidence coming through and you see the style coming through in those interviews. And then you've got merit-based full ride scholarships. I have awarded many of those over the years to debaters and speakers from high school. They've received the top tier scholarships. At one of my institutions that I taught at, they even removed the forensic scholarship from the highest academic tier because they found that those students were getting the merit-based scholarships anyway. So they were achieving at the highest level. And so they made those more accessible to other students who did not have the fantastic scores and grades because the debaters were already achieving at such a high level. So you've got a definite opportunity for those scholarships as well.
Yeah, and Professor mentioned that you don't have to debate in college. However, if you do have the passion to continue debate, there are a variety of competitive debate programs at college level. One of the university is Emory University. They have a full ride scholarship just for debaters. And my own daughter have found out once she started college, about half her fellow scholars, Jefferson scholars, actually had competitive speech and debating experience at high school. We're going to skip this chart. Yep.
There are a couple of questions in the chat, Mr. Harrison, that I wanted to address, if that's okay, really quickly.
Sure, yeah. Please go ahead.
What is the process and quality for a student to be selected for a national debate team? Most of them have either competition requirements that you have to compete at a certain level in high school, but many of them will ask that you interview. And I used to conduct auditions at the colleges that I taught for and coached for. So we ask students to audition for those top level scholarships. And the same is the case for the Harvards, for example, the Yales and others. So the process is really making yourself distinctive as a competitor. I am more than happy to talk to students during or after classes, by the way, and talk to you more about that process for being selected for national teams. If the question is about the National Speech and Debate Association World Schools team, that is a very competitive process. They have auditions from students from across the country. You have to be recommended by your coach. They review resumes, and then they interview and audition students before selecting them for the national debate team for the USA. Another question is, we're quite new to debate. We saw a long list of competitions. How do we know which ones are more respected or competitive? I listed some of the most competitive and respected tournaments: Harvard, Stanford, Yale in parliamentary debate. But there are others. Apple Valley in Minnesota is a national competition. The Glenbrooks in Chicago, Illinois. There are a host of tournaments that are nationally competitive, what we would call a national circuit tournament. Don't feel overwhelmed. I am more than happy to guide you through the process of understanding what those tournaments mean. We just wanted to have you recognize how the top level tournaments can be very competitive, but also that I help to administer or officiate many of these top level tournaments. In fact, the ones that I listed are ones that I have connections to. So for sure, we would be able to connect you with those tournaments, but there are also regional tournaments that may be more accessible for new debaters. We don't want to throw you into the Harvard debate tournament without a lot of experience, because then you will surely feel the sting of defeat. We wouldn't just send you and tell you without preparing you first about that. Would you please list some merit-based full ride scholarships? Almost all of those are institutional. So each of the academic institutions, as Mr. Harrison said, for example, at Emory, those are institutional scholarships. So there are national scholarships, merit-based scholarships, but most of them are institutional, and that's what you need to prepare for. In fact, in the creative writing class that I use, even though it's focused on creative writing, we also do a persuasive essay that you might use for advancing into superior secondary school or for application for admission to a college or university of your choice. And so it is important for you to practice those skills, because each and every university, and Mr. Harrison can tell you this because his daughter applied to a number of quality institutions, and each and every scholarship, each and every institution had their own set of requirements, their own essay requirements, their own testing requirements. And so in order to get a full ride at those institutions, you actually have to go through that academic institution's process. And we'll be more than happy to provide you guidance and support so that you can take a foundational essay and build up to that.
Yes.
And then the last question, and then we'll continue with the slides. I heard Model UN is not about debating, but rather coordination. What is your recommendation for middle schoolers, MUN or debate? What my recommendation for middle schoolers is to start by thinking about doing some individual speech competitions, and then also considering debate. Model United Nations is if you have a solid team. If you have a team of delegates you are accustomed to working with and coordinating with, but if you go into MUN without having that experience, you often will get relegated to the side because the national circuit competitors who recognize each other from different competitions and different schools will align themselves with each other based upon their competition quality and strategy. So part of it is you just have to take either a class in it or get involved if your school is well involved in it, to give yourself the opportunity through the assembly to distinguish yourself. It is possible to do so if you're an exceptional debater, but a lot of it is about that collaboration, that 5th C that we talked about. It's really about collaborating with others in order to, and the same with congressional debate, you have to be able to coordinate with others in order to successfully pass and argue for legislation. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Harrison. I see there's other kinds of questions coming up that I'll get to here in just a moment.
Yes. Yes, all good questions. We actually had a couple of slides at the end to address the question about a different debate formats, speech formats, and different tournaments. How do you choose the right ones? But one thing I want to highlight here is that we are not just providing you a lecture-based teaching. And besides the classroom teaching and practice, we recognize the pain points a lot of parents had, which is, well, my kids took this class, now what, right? So we have provided a platform outside the classroom. Our own students have founded a nonprofit called ISSDA, International Student Speech and Debate Association. And so far they have hosted 4 tournaments, right? Those tournaments were initially created just for our students because they need to continue to practice. And sometimes it's just a little bit difficult or impractical to drive around every weekend to participate. And NSDA may have the requirement, especially before pandemic, may have the requirement that your school has to be a member school. You as a participant has to be a member. And by the way, you cannot form a team across different schools. So there is some constraint with different competitive programs. So we created this program, and so far it's free for everybody to join, right? As long as the kids is motivated, we'll welcome them to join our tournaments. Now, with the pending merge between Viswise Academy and High Elite Education, we will have a much bigger platform. And as a matter of fact, Professor Pape and I have discussed with the founding team of ISSDA that we're going to connect them with a Harvard-based, university-based nonprofit debate organization, and we're going to get them on Tab Room so that we can attract more qualified coaches and participants, right? So there's a lot of things you can do and far beyond what you will learn from the class. Now, professor was kind enough to say that he's happy to talk to your kids after the class. In fact, we have created weekly office hours, right? Sometimes Professor Pape feel lonely because there will be only 1 or 2 kids showed up, right? So I encourage your kids to take advantage of those opportunities we created for you. All right, let me move to the next one. Okay, it's frozen again. Okay. I know that in the Chinese culture, right, we really put a lot of emphasis on winning, which is great. And although we wanted to make it clear that our foundation class, again, was designed to teach you those 5 C skills, to teach you how to find a reliable source, how to use evidence, and how to write cases, right? How to do independent research. Those are lifetime portable skills. No matter where you go, no matter what profession, what industry you're going to be working in, those are lifetime skills you're going to need. So if your purpose is to immediately win a couple medals here and there, then the foundation class may not be the right one for you, right? And the intermediate class and advanced debate class were created to get your kids ready for those competitions. Now, a lot of you, I know, is going to ask us, okay, so did your student win this and win that? And before I ask Professor Pape to discuss how he coached a college team to win national titles 4 out of the last 5 years. And on screen, you're going to see a couple of students from Beijing. Those were students who took our class and took our private coaching. And in 2020, this was the only debate team from mainland China and got into the Harvard debate tournament. I think it's called a Harvard National Forensic Tournament, right? And this was the only international team who got into the final. And it was the #1 among all international teams. One of the debaters, Vicky Fang, had the highest raw score. Because of the competition rules, the highest score and lowest score has to be get rid of. So her final score was 118.5, only half point behind a boy from New York City. So this was the result. Vicky Fang from China scored 118.5. So if she can do it, many of you can do that as well, right? But don't have too much pressure of winning. Enjoy the process, and winning a national title, treat that as a byproduct, right? And this lifetime skills you picked up, and your kids will immediately finding that's helpful. Whether they want to convince you to allow them to sleep over at a friend's house, or convince you that playing a computer game, video games, 30 minutes, 40 minutes a day, it's not going to hurt. And to convincing a judge to give him the winning title, or winning a national scholarship, or getting a job at a Google or Amazon or Goldman Sachs, right? Those skills are far more important than just winning a title. However, we do have a lot of students, very competitive students. In fact, last year, 4 of our students won top titles in China, the NSDA China Tournament Championship. The public forum winners were Vicky and James. Vicky was from Beijing and James was from Guangzhou. And Lisa was the #1 debater in China's National High School Debate League tournament. Okay, I'm gonna switch the topic a little bit, right? We talked about speed debate, or in general, communication skills were critical for your academic success. How critical it is for your career success. I mentioned earlier that for me personally, the critical factor was my communication skills. I came from mainland China, and before I came to the States, I never went to any foreign college. But luckily, I had a professor from Indiana at the time. He was actually a physics professor. He was teaching at Zhejiang University. I, at the time, was a graduate student pursuing a master's degree, but I sit in his class for PhD candidates. He didn't find out until the midterm. Actually, let me take that back. He did find out, but he was kind enough to did not point that out. But at the middle term, he said that you're probably not an official enrolled student for my class. However, I appreciate your willingness to learn, so I will let you audit my class. At the end of that class, I was one of the top 2 writers in his class. I benefited tremendously in corporate America, right? And I know in the audience, we probably have a lot of people working for Fortune 500 companies in variety of management role or leadership roles. We can all ask ourselves, what got us into that leadership role, right? I can guarantee that 9 out of 10 is going to say it was my communication skills. So sometimes I say that in corporate America or in American culture, Western culture, you know, you can argue is oftentimes is 70% about how you communicate, how you convey the message, how you present yourself. This is not to say that, you know, doing the actual work is not important, but when you climb corporate American ladder, the higher you go, the less important the hardcore functional skills are, right? Because you're going to be leading people, you're going to be rallying people, you're going to be motivated people, the smartest people working for you, or bring the best out of them, right? That takes a lot of convincing, effective communication skills to make that happen, right? You're not going to be able to know everything. You're going to be relying on your team to provide you that support. So, but unfortunately, for most of us Chinese Americans, we very soon would hit an invisible bamboo ceiling in America. What's the definition? The definition is a combination of individual, cultural, organizational, and political factors that impede Asian Americans' career progress inside your organizations. They were having a lot of statistics to show that Asian Americans have the highest education attainment. Many of us have PhDs, master's degrees, you know, bachelor's degrees from Ivy schools, right? But we have the lowest chance of rising to management compared with other ethnic groups. Why? Now, that statement is actually misleading. I had a question mark there, and Professor Pape asked me to remove it because I see he probably didn't know why I had that question mark there. I took that statement from other official publications. However, I question that because if we look at Indian Americans, they're also Asian Americans, right? Right? But you're going to find that they have an overrepresentation in leadership roles or in politics. You guys can do due diligence to find out how many senators now are Indian Americans. Then you calculate their population, right, out of the entire U.S. population. You do the math, you're going to find that they have more CEOs, they have more politicians in leadership roles, they have more top business school deans. Years ago, I actually struggled to find many professors in top business schools. Now we have more, like Chinese Americans, as professors in Wharton business schools, for example, right? Years ago, I struggled to find any one of them, right? There's a very limited number of that. This is a chart I stole back in 2014. This is outdated, right? The numbers actually today are more stunning than what you see here, right? Indian Americans have been very successful in different industry, not just the technology industry, in consumer industry, for example. They have been tremendously successful, leading Fortune 500 companies successfully. So why? So when we say Asian Americans have the lowest chance of rising to management, it's not so for Indian Americans. Why? Right? So part of our mission at High Elites Education or Viswise Academy is to advocate for Asian Americans, those underrepresented Asians, in management, in leadership roles, in politics. This is something I can be proud of, not for vanity, because and I was one of the top 5 finalists for the first ever Eli Lilly Global Innovation Challenge that was open to global citizens. Anybody who are above 18 years old can enter that innovation. And I was the single Chinese American on that stage. There were 5 finalist teams. My partner at the time got stuck thanks to a travel restriction at the time. She got stuck in UK, in London or Paris, I forgot. So I entered the final. There are things I cannot say publicly, right? But frankly, there have been executives coming to me after the final said that you really did a phenomenal job. I did not win it, okay? And another team from Boston won $50,000 as the champion, right? But I did a very good representing as a team without any physical product, without any funding backing us, and competing against teams from Boston, from New York City, with millions of dollars, with large hospitals behind them. We are a team without any backing. But it was all based on the idea we had and our ability to communicate our vision clearly to the judge to get us to the final. Oh, by the way, I had a couple of images here, and 2 of the judges or the final the official who was awarding us the trophy, both of them are Indian Americans. The CTO and the chief digital officer at Eli Lilly was an Indian American lady with a PhD in statistics, right? Tremendously successful women. Now, I encourage you to search this joint study by Columbia Business School and MIT Sloan School of Management and the University of Michigan School of Business. They did a study to compare Eastern Asians, mainly Chinese American, versus South Asians, mainly Indian Americans. They did surveys of thousands of people to get their perspective and impression of Chinese versus Indian Americans. I should say Eastern Asians and versus Southern Asians, right? Not surprisingly, most of people feel that South Asians are more suitable for leadership roles. Why? I leave that to your own exploration to seek the answer to that question. because of time constraint, I'm not going to go through that. So when your kids coming to take our class, not only they're going to learn communication skills, but they will also learn leadership skills through the platform Wisdom Academy or with Wise Academy has built with Coffee Club, and Highlights Education have built. So you will pick up a lot of critical skills. How do we break invisible ceiling? Again, because of time constraint, we don't have time to go through the detail, but let's start with parenting. Why I said that? My generation, most of the audience tonight, we came from a time where China was adopt the education system from Russia or former Soviet Union, right? It's a knowledge-based learning, knowledge-based teaching. At that time, was the right thing to do for a new country that badly needed a lot of STEM engineers, mathematicians, right? So knowledge-based learning was actually critical for the country's success or stability, right? However, if we continue to coach and guide our kids using the traditional education, knowledge-based education system, we are essentially taking away their future. I think I got to read one of those slides. An American modern educator said that if you teach today's kids with yesterday's methodology, you are robbing their future. That's, if there's one thing you take away from me tonight, that's what I want to tell you, is that we need to start changing the way we parenting. Right? This country is a very diverse country. A lot of us focus a lot on STEM. Don't take me wrong, that's critical. I have an engineering background, and I send my younger daughter to math class too. However, you have to realize that this society needs people with a diverse background. If everybody is a mathematician, if everybody is a computer programmer, imagine how boring this world would be. Imagine, I can't even imagine MIT is going to take every kid alike. Because guess what? They're not going to be able to learn from each other. They're not going to benefit from a kid with a different background, right? So focusing on what passion your kids have. Every kid has talent. They may not be a finalist for physics, Olympics or math Olympics, right? But you might find they have talent for arts. You might find that they have talent for sports, fencing, right? Or they may have talent for speaking, right? Convincing people to do the right thing. That might be a skill your kid have. Don't discourage them, encourage them, right? And managing expectations, executive communication, that's a whole hour topic. I can talk about it, right? But it's fair to say that improving your kids' communication skill, I don't care what they're going to do. Even if they want to become a programmer, they're going to find that skill is critical. Networking, right? It took me 5 years at IBM to learn that I didn't understand what a true network is, what a sponsor is. I didn't know why my career got stuck, right? Because I graduated from a leadership development program at IBM. But once I get to a certain level, I stopped. And why? And at that moment, I realized that an effective communication with executives, it was what I was missing in my toolbox, right? I'm going to ask Professor Pape to cover what students can learn from public speaking class instead of, in addition to winning a couple medals.
One of the questions from earlier was, what are the classes that I teach? And one of the classes is foundations, foundations for public speaking and debate. One of the approaches that I really believe in, Mr. Harrison believes in, and many coaches I talk to, is that you have to emphasize the importance of public speaking in addition to learning how to debate. A lot of times students want to immediately jump into debate. And we do play a little bit at the very beginning of the class with debate to get a little feel for it. But most of the students get really excited about debate. It's sort of like for those of you who have taken piano or your students have taken piano lessons, it's sort of like the student who says, I want to sit down, teach me how to play Beethoven, right? You have to learn how to play your scales first and arpeggios before you can jump into learning some of the more advanced skills. So we are going to start with the foundation of public speaking. Another question earlier was about impromptu, and we focus a lot on impromptu speaking in that foundations class. So we will start on day one with doing some impromptu speaking, for example, and that's heavily emphasized in that foundations class. In addition to the foundations class, I also offer intermediate and advanced level classes. The foundations class is not about getting you into the championship or winner's circle. It's really about developing those initial skills and introducing you to a wide range of different kinds of speaking and debating. The more advanced classes then will guide you into other specific formats. I also teach a competitive speech class, and the competitive speech class gives you an opportunity to, for example, focus on impromptu. Somebody else in the chat was asking about acting, and there are acting categories that we can also will work with in the competitive speech category, and so that's another opportunity for you as well. But those are the different classes that I offer in addition to Model United Nations, which is currently subscribed. In terms of public speaking, emphasis on being as natural as you can and not pre-programmed. Make sure that you are a memorable speaker, someone who stands out from the other debaters. You will focus on impromptu speaking, and you will definitely gain more confidence. Somebody else earlier asked in the chat what my style is. And I think Mr. Harrison would tell you, and the feedback I've gotten so far is that I'm a very energetic but laid back instructor. I really enjoy working with students. I like to meet them where they are. I have taught little elementary school kids how to do speaking and debating, and that's great fun, through middle school, high school, and obviously college. So it all starts with public speaking as a foundation, and then we build up from that foundations class into other classes. Okay, so that's the focus for the public speaking section of the foundations class.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention here is that the design of our foundation class is very different from vast majority of the class out there. We intentionally and consciously decided that we are going to combine public speaking and debate foundation class. Now we can easily separate them into, divide them into two classes. Commercially or business-wise, it's actually better for us, right? Because we're gonna have students take both classes, but we condense them into one single class for the reason Professor Pape mentioned. You don't want to jump too quickly into debate without building a good public speaking skills. And when we combine those two classes into one, your kids will be transitioning between speaking and debate, and which make it very interesting for them. Because if the entire class was all public speaking, sometimes they get bored, right? If we let them jump too fast into debate, and that's also another thing we have found out is that sometimes we have students from outside our network coming to us said that, hey, I have learned speech and debate for 2 years. I've attended tournaments, can I take your advanced debate class? We say, okay, fine, you can try that. But more often than not, we found that they have not built a solid foundation because they jumped too quickly into a competitive learning environment where the coach was emphasizing on techniques. And I use taking TOEFL tests or GRE tests as an example. If your goal is to achieve a higher score, I don't care what ETS said that they can really, you cannot prepare for the test to get a high score. That's not true. If you keep practicing, you have a high chance of getting a higher score. But does that mean you have organically improved your English skill? No. You could be a very high scholar on those tests. But when I put you into a college classroom, you cannot communicate with your classmates. You cannot get on stage and talking confidently and naturally to the audience. So that perfect score on TOEFL, it doesn't mean much. So I use that energy here is that we create this foundation class by that calling, right? Meaning is to build a solid, robust foundation. So you have that level, you have that foundation for your future success, whether you want to enter a competition or you want to compete for a scholarship or compete for a job.
To answer the question about experience level, the foundations class and the competitive speech class you can enter at any time. You do not have to have any prior experience. The intermediate class is best for those who have had at least a year of debate, and the advanced class is best for those who have 2 years of debate. But it really depends on the student and what they've learned, and it's not always about their success level either. I have judged some very competitive rounds. I remember one in particular where the students were using debate jargon. And after the round, I said, I have a question for you with one of the debaters. And I said, what does that term mean? And they could not actually explain the terminology they were using as a weapon in the debate round. And I knew right away that they had been taught a technique to throw out a term in order to scare the opponent. That does not work with me. You have to actually understand what you're doing as a debater, not just throw out a term, because that will be very embarrassing for everyone. And in this case, the student was just not well coached and well prepared to do that. What are we going to learn in the debate class? Public speaking, research, argumentation, and persuasion are the key emphases for that foundations class, as well as in the intermediate debate class. We do get into more advanced theoretical components of debate in the advanced debate class. It's really dependent upon the students in that class, and it really depends on what experience level the students have. So we all need to make sure we have a solid foundation before we move on to the next level. Okay.
I completely understand the temptation of entering kids into tournaments and competitions and boost their confidence, right? And also make the parents feel good about that. But I would caution that, especially at the regional tournaments level, often I found that not all the coaches or not all the judges were well trained, right? The winning or losing sometimes does not necessarily reflect whether you are a solid speaker or debater, right? So don't get discouraged if you didn't win, but more importantly, and think about why you want to take those classes. Is that just winning some insignificant medals? When I say that, is practically speaking, winning a regional competition probably not going to get you enough advantage over other kids getting to an Ivy school, right? That's just reality. So so don't focus too much on those tournaments at the beginning, but once they are at that level, we actually encourage them, we push them to attend those tournaments. For all the students taking our intermediate and advanced debate, we highly encourage them to attend our free tournaments outside the class, right? We're just one step short of mandating that, you know. All right, so let's see, do I have any slides left? Okay, this is a lot of parents ask us the questions, you know, what are different formats of speech, different formats of debate, what's the difference, and what are tournaments I can enter? How do I decide which one is a good fit for us? So Professor Hui, can you elaborate on those three key speech formats?
Yes, this is the focus of the competitive speech class. So one of you asked if you're more interested in speech than debate, take the competitive speech class. There we will focus on public address events, particularly informative and oratory. We will work on interpretation events for those who are interested in that, where they will select and perform literature. Even if your son or daughter is not really big into interpretation, we can at least do some interpretation exercises which will advance their skill set, even if they decide not to compete in that particular type of event. And then everybody can benefit from limited preparation. That's impromptu. Somebody was asking earlier about impromptu speaking as a focus. This is a really good place to go because we will be focusing on impromptu speaking for competition as well as extemporaneous speaking, which is a big word that really is about current events and understanding current events and how to approach current events questions. So this speech format section is really for the competitive speech class, and we'll go into detail on all three of these specific areas of speech formats. And for those who, depending upon the class and the interest of the students and parents, we can always branch off into some of the smaller categories. Middle school, for example, offers a wider range of different kinds of categories to be involved in. You'll find that the high school realm does some additional events also. So we'll talk about those and see what the interests are of the students in the class, but this is the focal point for the competitive speech class. And then on the next slide are the debate formats. So public forum debate, which is emphasized in the intermediate class. Somebody asked about the progression of the classes. So if you start with foundations, you'll be able to move immediately from foundations into the intermediate class. You'll be well prepared for intermediate debate. And then those who take intermediate debate will be very well prepared for advanced debate. So there is a progression in the curriculum. It assumes that if you start at the very beginning and you go all the way through advanced level debate, that you will be ready for debate competitions by the end of the intermediate debate class. You should be able to enter some novice level, maybe even junior varsity level public forum tournaments at the end of intermediate. Advanced, it focuses on other debate formats and the ability to diversify into parliamentary styles of debate and world school style of debate. Lincoln Douglas debate is also available. It's one-on-one debate. It is very focused on values, but it depends upon where you are in the country. So sometimes I will encourage students to participate in Lincoln Douglas because it's one-on-one. So you don't have to coordinate with a partner, especially a partner from the same school. But it really depends on which part of the country you debate in. Some of the debaters talk quickly and use more theoretical positions than other debaters do. So this is perhaps the one that divides the country the most between different qualities of how Lincoln Douglas debate is practiced. Policy debate is very challenging. Many of there are some urban debate leagues that will focus on policy debate from the very foundations, but they do not allow their debaters to talk super quickly at the beginning. So it makes it much more accessible. Talking fast is the norm in policy debate. It assumes that you know the evidence well, that your judges know the evidence well and the arguments well, that you know the theory and you're capable of doing so at a very rapid fire level. You have to, if you're going to do policy, you have to be able to speak quickly and clearly in English and have excellent comprehension skills and excellent vocabulary. If you're interested in policy debate, I'm more than happy to coach you. But understand that it's a challenging format, and many people like to say, oh, I want to do policy. I heard that's what Harvard does. Well, yes, Harvard does that at the college level,
right.
But understand that their 4 years of high school experience are leading to that kind of a debate experience, not a foundations debate experience. So don't get too carried away because you hear that Harvard has a championship policy debate program. I'm very familiar with their program. I love their coaches. I work with them every summer, but we're not going to put you through that particular program unless you're super prepared for it. Our focus in intermediate is public forum. If you want to do more on Lincoln Douglas or policy, I'm more than happy to guide the students in those classes. And you can always express specific interest to Viswise. Sophia mentioned that you can contact us. If you find, for example, the parent in Shanghai said that the times did not work out for these classes, we will offer additional classes in the future. So please indicate what your interests are. And if you think you have enough students to form your own independent class in your city, then we can certainly work with you to develop a new class and offer it at a time that's appropriate. I know working with students in Beijing and Shanghai, the teaching times are very unique. Either late in the evening for me or early in the morning for me, which is perfectly fine. But those are not necessarily the same times that the students in the United States would want to participate in those particular classes. We have other debate formats on the next slide that I will just briefly talk about.
Yes, and before we go there, and since we have a lot of questions, I did those formats, public forum and Lincoln Douglas and policy debate, were most frequently asked about by our parents. So I had added links, and those links were all going to link to YouTube videos from NSDA 2019 or 2018 final. And I wanted to give the parents a little bit of flavor while you look through the questions from the chat room.
Yep.
So let me give it a try.
All right, so while Mr. Harrison is clicking on those, let me go ahead and start working through some of the questions. In terms of the specific number of students to form a class, Mr. Harrison, is Viswise using the same numbers that we were using?
Yes, okay. Yes. For the time being, we limit the class to 8 students per class. Now, I also want to say that we always have adopted the policy that you are welcome to try one class. If it doesn't fit, you can drop, right? However, to ensure the quality of the class, because we can't afford to have 20 students trying a class, it's gonna compromise the teaching quality, right? So oftentimes we can take up to 10 students for the first class. And if after the first class, for whatever reason, the kids wants to drop and no question asked, we will provide a full refund of the tuition, right? Now, the problem we often run into is the opposite, is that, well, we had 9 students, every single one of them want to stay. We had 10 students, every single one of them wanted to stay. So at that time, what we do is we have a discussion with all the parents. If every parents agree that that class might have 9 or 10 students, however, we're going to add an extra bonus class when we have more than 8 students. Okay, so but normally by design we have 8 students per class, and that's also because most of the debate is a team of 2, right? And when you have practice rounds, you have 2-on-2 and competing against each other, which is much easier to manage. Okay, so I launched this video, and I'm gonna play a little bit so you get a feel of what is a public forum debate.
And the video might be playing underneath your slides. I'm not sure. I think you clicked it, but.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. I think I should stop sharing that first. Mm-hmm. 1 second.
I'll answer an additional question, and then I'll work my way up the questions. And, oh, there we go.
Okay.
It looks like it might be on mute.
Oh, it's on mute?
Yep.
Let me see. No, I was not on mute. Maybe but you can see the screen, right? Can't hear.
Yeah, we can see the screen. I can't hear the debater.
Oh, I don't know why, but that's okay. If the parents join the chat group, I can send you the link.
Yep.
And I highly encourage you to, if you can't decide, right, what format you like, especially for experienced debaters, and I encourage you to watch the national finals with your kids. Those are excellent speakers. Okay, let me stop this.
Okay. We answered the question about class size. The class frequency for these initial classes is every week at that same time, that same day of the week. However, we have also offered more intensive classes, and I have done so, and we can certainly arrange for this. I have no problem with it during the breaks. In particular, sometimes you want to take a class intensely for that break period, in which case I have met with students every day during the break. And so it's a very, very intensive format to do, but I have taught actually the last summer session before Harvard debate and NSDA nationals, I did that for 3 or 4 different classes. We did daily meetings for 2 weeks. And so we were able to get in an entire class within a 2-week break. And we do offer them year round. Yes, exactly. Yep. Yes, and it looks like the chat link is being put in there. Kids can practice more often on their free time with students from the ISSDA, and we can certainly connect you with students who can do some additional debating with those students. You can also do some after class meetings if you would like, if once a week is not a sufficient frequency for you. Okay. So Mr. Harrison shared that public forum debate round with you. I'm now going to work my way back up after this class. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to start the slides again so you can discuss other debate formats.
After this class, what's next? Yes, we offer those 3 classes, foundations, intermediate, and advanced. But we certainly have plenty of opportunities if there are students who wish to take even more further classes. I'm more than happy to offer additional classes. This is what was offered through High Elites, and we will offer what is demanded in Viswise. We're more than happy to offer additional classes based upon the interests of the parents. And again, if you find that the times for these first sessions are not accessible for you and your students, please reach out to Viswise and say, hey, I'd really like to do this. Here are my circumstances, and Sophia will work with you and we can develop additional classes. I'm now retired from coaching and teaching at the college level. And so I'm available for additional classes if the demand is sufficient to do that.
I want to say that I'm grateful that Professor Pape finally retired from college because we didn't have the luxury to have him teach so many classes for us. He's very passionate about teaching kids. So take advantage of the opportunity, make him busy.
Absolutely. Moving backward, does the class move together into higher level classes? I answered that one, and I answered the speech classes. The question about which level is better for 6th graders, if the English skills are solid, if the academics are solid, I do think that the 6th grader could join 6th through 8th grade classes and be fine. 3 through 5 is really for those elementary school kids. It's all about SPAR debating, which is spontaneous argument debating. It's all about impromptu speaking, do a little bit of research, but it's a lot of fun. I love working with the younger grades, but it's less structured and more just developing those fundamental skill sets. We ask them to do a little bit of research, but not a lot of research, more sparring, less public forum style and more fun topics, easygoing topics for elementary kids. I find, again, the middle schoolers can take on a little bit more sophisticated topics than the elementary school kids. How many students in 6th through 8th grade? 8. We do have 8, and Mr. Harrison explained what happens if we have 9 or 10. I'm more than happy to offer an assessment if you want to have me interview the student. If you say, yes, I'm committed, he's going to take some classes, but I want you to meet with him first, I am happy to offer that. Please reach out to Sophia and Viswise, and we can arrange an opportunity for me to meet one-on-one with you and your child and make sure they're taking the appropriate class. My child has been on the school team for 2 years. Can he be evaluated? Yes, I also answered that a little bit with if you have 1 year of experience, intermediate seems to be a good fit. If you have 2 years of experience, advanced seems to be a good fit, but it really does depend on the student and how much public speaking they've done. I see Dr. Moran's comment about diversity and the bamboo ceiling, and that's certainly something that we can talk more about and even debate in class. Students have the opportunity to choose some of their own debate topics and do research on those topics. And so that may end up being a topic that is covered in the class. How to develop children's interest in debate. I find that students, if they really get into the spar debating, which is what we start with, which again is spontaneous argument, we're talking about cats versus dogs kind of topics. And if students get into it and they get fired up and want to meet with their teams and debate with others and get really excited about forming arguments and winning and competing, those students are often turned on to education and critical thinking in ways that other students are not. Because they may be bored in school. I've had a lot of debaters who were kind of bored in school and they feel that debate is much more interactive and dynamic. And so they actually enjoy it even more and find debate to be very, very motivating. And I realized this is a little while ago, Anne's comment about reinforcing the stereotypes. I think the focus, at least for my classes, is actually on breaking those stereotypes. I understand Mr. Harrison was sort of providing a foundational argument there with regard to certain groups of the Asian American community in general with regard to specific classes, but certainly in my classes, we will debate anything and we will approach it openly and honestly and authentically. We want to break down any stereotypes in debate class. Do you accompany your trainees to competitions in addition to training? Since most of the tournaments have been online and the training is online, it is certainly possible for me to do something like that. Understanding that I have some prior commitments with other tournaments on certain weekends, and I do have teaching that occurs on weekends as well. So that would have to be something that would be arranged student by student if there were interest in that, but certainly being able to provide students support before they go into the tournament, making sure that they are attending an appropriate tournament for their level so that they don't get massacred at their first tournament is really important, because that does not help anybody feel better if they go to a tournament only to get really hurt by being beaten up by intense competition. So we want to choose appropriate for their level of competition and make sure that they have a really good positive experience. So, and there are options to work with me individually. I see that the Viswise website does have coaching, one-on-one coaching, and I'm happy to also offer one-on-one coaching as the needs arise. And Sophia, I think, can coordinate that. Will they have the chance to join in a national debate tournament elementary? There are no national elementary debate tournaments that I am aware of. The NSDA has not yet expanded into elementary schools. They do allow those who graduated from the 5th grade to compete in NSDA nationals at the middle school level, but that's the only level that I have seen. There is an initiative in Broward County, Florida, that they have elementary school competitions. I can ask them if they're doing any of those online this year. Otherwise, they've just done them for themselves. But we do offer elementary students the opportunity to compete in the ISSDA. But I'm not aware of any other elementary level national competitions. Okay. And
by the way, we do find that the most passionate age group, were actually elementary group, right? To the extent I feel like it was like a zoo, right? I could not handle that, but professor had fun with those kids, and they really worked hard, and oftentimes they wait 40 minutes before the class start. They were sitting there just waiting, and they enjoyed it so much. And there have been kids that at the end of class said, "What? It's already over?" and they missed it. So they build a friendship through that class too.
Eric asked the question, when would be a good age kids could start to join the program? I think early on, elementary, middle school. If they're not that confident in speaking, join the foundations class, gain that confidence, make sure that you support them, let them know that impromptu is going to be done in the first class. I can always tell right away when students are scared if they just won't do impromptu speaking at the beginning because they're intimidated by it. And so talk to your sons and daughters if they're interested in taking that class, that they have to be willing to do a little bit of speaking in order to improve their skill set. And that sounds funny, perhaps, to say that, but I've actually had some students who I will have to tell the parents, I can't get them to talk in a speech and debate class. So they have to be able to participate. We can certainly improve their skill sets, but they have to participate in order to do that. And I think the fan of reading question that Eric asked is a good one. When you have to make your reading come alive by using it in debate, you immediately start to connect with the material more than just sitting there and reading dry material, because you have to use it right away, you have to explain it right away, and we can go through the process of going through complex material in the class when we're debating that topic. Leah asks, in your debate coaching career, have you coached any students who have language deficits but nonetheless have developed interest in debate? I actually do have an example, a recent example. Mr. Harrison did have a student who is autistic who took one of my classes. He was a very eager participant. I think that there were times when he maybe said some things that were not the most appropriate. And so we did have to talk a little bit about what's appropriate to say in the debates, but his enthusiasm, his intellect, his willingness to engage his colleagues was exceptional. And that particular student, I believe to at least be on the spectrum with regard to autism. So it is certainly possible to do so and be successful. Do your classes go deep into each individual type of speech and debate? Competitive speech, we go through all three of those categories deeply. In foundations, we do take a topic, research it heavily, and debate it. But it's the intermediate class where we go very deeply into debate, and the advanced class, we go into debate theory and heavy concepts. So we definitely advance your skills throughout, but we don't go super deep in that foundations class, except for within the topic. And that's when I really find out if students are really into it and want to go further, or whether or not they end on the foundations, just saying, I think I've had enough, I've improved some skills, but I'm not necessarily interested in going any further than that. Will taking an acting class? Yeah, sure, you can take an acting class. You'll find that the competitive speech class will also be a good avenue for them if they're into acting. I have both acting and public speaking students join that class. And I love converting debaters into speakers and even performers. It's great fun. Once you let yourself go and realize how fun it is to perform literature, I have a lot of students who are turned on by those. I know that the costs are on the website. To answer Karen's question, the classes run 90 minutes each, and my teaching style is very, very, very laid back. I believe that then ends as I scroll up, I've answered the questions I believe above that. So what I'm now going to do is go down and answer the newest questions and comments that we have here. Again, the cost.
May I suggest that because we still have a few slides to go through.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's go ahead and finish those.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And some of the parents may need to leave because it's getting late. So at least we cover the key contents.
Sure.
So yeah, so debate formats, what schools, etc.
Okay. I think you need to move to that slide. I just see the YouTube screen.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, right. Okay. I'm seeing the screen, but you can't. 1 second. So
there we go.
Let me reshare the screen.
There we go. And if you stick around, I do promise to answer all of the questions that are on there. But we'll finish our slides. That way, if you need to leave, that's great. And you can stay in contact. Otherwise, we'll answer the rest of the questions when we're finished. So these are some additional debate formats that we work on. World Schools Debate, I do play with that format in the intermediate class. And we can do more in the advanced class if students are really into it. My last class, there was a lot of World Schools debating that was done. Parliamentary debate, teams of 2, very accessible debate, but what happens is the topics change every round, much like many of the World Schools topics. And so we do some practice rounds. This is really based on the class. I had a middle school class that did not enjoy parliamentary debates. They found it too challenging. The topics went over their head, and so that was not a good fit for that particular class. But I had a high school class that loved it, and I had another middle school class that really loved parley debate and wished they could do their own parliamentary debate league. So I've had a lot of range of experiences dealing with the parliamentary style, which is basically impromptu debate. And then Model United Nations and congressional debate are wonderful, but they are assemblies. You have to coordinate with others. You propose bills, resolutions. You have dockets of legislation or resolutions that you submit. And so there are committees in Model UN. You have to work together in order to pass things. You have to work together as different countries, or in the case of congressional debate, as representatives or senators. So it is a very collaborative model. I do a little bit of that in the other classes, but the focus of that really is that separate Model United Nations class, because it really is quite different from other formats of debate. If you're interested, I do recommend that you take some debate classes before you do Model UN. You will find that those skill sets really do cross-apply, and not a lot of the curriculum is repeated, actually. All right, and then,
Okay, here.
Yep. And then we have a lot of, for the creative writing class, somebody asked about the connection between speech and debate and writing, and there does not have to be a connection. I do ask that students share their writing aloud. One of my unique qualities of the creative writing class is encouraging students to read their writing. I will read it for them if they're not comfortable at first, but I do encourage students to be willing to read their materials aloud. There is a very different style of performance when you read your poetry aloud, or when you do slam or spoken word poetry, for example, or when you read a short story or short screenplay aloud, compared to just writing it and silently reading it. So I find that that works really well. I do encourage students to speak them, but you do not have to have any public speaking debate classes in advance of the writing class. Here are some examples of writing competitions that students can submit and participate in. All of them, except for the National Poetry Competition, are available to those who are younger. The National Poetry Competition, unfortunately, is only available for older students, but the others have different grade levels that you can submit to. There's a sample prompt on here that we work through these in creative writing classes, and this is one example. Describe what creativity means to you. How has your creative expression supported your personal development? What advice would you give to others to develop creativity in our youth? So this is a great example of a prompt that we would talk about in the class that students would contribute to, and then they would do some writing about this kind of a prompt in order to prepare themselves for essay competitions. Obviously, a lot of these are poetry or short story or screenplay submissions, and I do allow students to consider and submit other works of art. So students have the opportunity in the creative writing class to do a little bit of their own project toward the end. So sometimes students will choose photography or drawing. I've had students who will do a podcast. So there are other creative outlets that students like to do, and that part is variable based upon the individual student.
And I do want to say that sometimes the writing class can tend to be, in general term, right, can tend to be less interactive than public speaking debate class, but not so for our creative writing class. And also, in a general term, kids tend to avoid taking writing classes. But what I can guarantee you is that for all the students who have taken our creative class, they found it very engaging, interactive, and interesting. Every class is different. I intentionally elaborated on New York Times writing contests, right? A different variety of contests, because most of those were covered under creative writing. For example, there was one specific section of the class covering podcast. And I also asked the professor to create a class to teach students writing application essays, because oftentimes, especially top programs, super competitive programs, you need to be creative to write an essay to make you stand out.
And a debater, sometimes you think, oh, a debater knows how to write. And so they should really be successful in these persuasive essays. And sometimes debaters write basically a case. And so it has evidence and arguments, but it has no creativity. And when you read a lot of essays, you need to have a sense of creativity and personality. You have to integrate your resume and your skills and your background into these essays. And debate essays can be very flat sometimes if you're not willing to be creative. So students can benefit from both debate classes as well as creative writing classes, and they can improve their own skills. But I think creative writing is an excellent class to take before you submit a persuasive essay for, say, a college application. That's really, really important to be able to have that skill set. And then these are just an example of some of the speech and debate tournaments that we have. The Speech and Debate Association has springboard tournaments that are free. I've coached in the Pi Kappa Delta National Tournament at the college level. That's the tournament that my college won 4 of the last 5 years. We were successful in all formats of debate and achieved national success in all formats of debate. And so that's why that's listed there. But also, I mentioned the other ones earlier: Apple Valley, Stanford, Harvard, and Yale, regional tournaments. I will help guide the students in my classes to make sure they're taking the best classes for them. Okay. And then,
that's it.
Okay, excellent.
That's the end of it. Yep.
All right, so let me jump into some of the other questions. This is obviously an appropriate time. You're not being rude at all by leaving, and I know some of you already had to leave early, but hopefully you're communicating with Sophia and getting some of your other questions, logistical questions, answered. The cost for the classes are available online. I answered the writing class question. How easy is it to switch from PF to LD? Public forum is, you have the foundational skill sets to switch to Lincoln Douglas, but if you, depending upon which part of the country you're in, it is actually difficult to transition to LD depending upon how it's regarded. Let me make one comment so that it's not quite so vague. What's happened with Lincoln Douglas debate over the last 20 years, 15 to 20 years, is that it has become more like team policy debate. Individual debaters have churned Lincoln Douglas debate in many parts of the country into one-person policy. So they make it fast, they make it heavily evidential, and they make it very theoretical. And other parts of the country have more traditional value-based debate in Lincoln Douglas. So in Lincoln Douglas, I will teach you both methods because they're important to learn, but we really have to see which part of the country and where you're participating. If you're doing a national circuit Lincoln Douglas tournament, such as Harvard, such as Stanford, I guarantee you it will be fast and it will be intense. And so it'll be much more like team policy debate. And I'm not saying that is a bad format. It's just that is where that debate format has gone. And because it's not as accessible, I don't have a tendency to teach that immediately because it's hard for students to grasp, because I'm teaching you techniques and speed techniques as opposed to good quality debate skills, at least at the beginning. And so I don't want to do that for you.
And by the way, after you join the chat room, I will search a video I took during the Harvard debate camp to give you a flavor of what the positive debate beginners were practicing. They were biting into a pencil, right? Lining up in a hallway, practicing fast speaking. And the links I sent you, the third link I posted in the chat room, don't be misled by that. That's a slow positive debate. It's not the best one, because the typical fast one, most of us sit there for 10 minutes. You will be lucky to pick out one complete sentence from that. It's that fast.
It's not designed for general audiences. It's
not at all
for experts in debate who understand the concepts and know what the evidence is. If they miss something, they will ask for it. So you'll actually have a debater who's not familiar with a piece of evidence that was read quickly. They didn't actually write it all down. They will say, can you give me that card or that piece of evidence so that I can read it, because they were new to it. But if they already are familiar with it, they know the same authors all year, they debate that topic all year long. And by the time you're through a few tournaments, everybody's going faster to get more arguments out there. They already know what the evidence is. They already know what the common arguments are. You're debating it for a year, so they take new angles and approaches, and they just go faster. And I could do a whole long conversation about why that is and how that's happened. There's a long history of debate sort of following that path. We don't want to do that as an emphasis, though. We just don't think it's as educational, especially for beginning debaters, because we want you to learn that skill set. We want you to be good debaters first, and then competitive policy debaters later, if that's where you wish to go. Do we offer training for adults? We have talked about that. I do think that we will be offering some adult sessions as well. I would love to do that through Viswise. I know that often adult training and public speaking is left to a group called Toastmasters International. And that's a fine group to be a part of, but I think that we can improve upon some of the elements of Toastmasters. And the proliferation and advancement of TED Talks, which is what that picture is of me next to Harrison, is my giving a TED Talk, which stands for Technology, Education, and Design. If you go to YouTube and search for my name, you'll see my TED Talk. You're certainly welcome to watch it. It's about the effects of social media on our lives. And so that's more of the kind of training that I would do for adults. And plus being able to work individually with adults would be tremendous opportunity. Anne writes, I think immediate feedback during the tournament is valuable, and most tournaments do offer feedback after the round is done, so that debaters can take that feedback and improve for the next round. There's a question about posting codes, barcodes. Let's see. Ooh, I think we're going to get through these faster than I thought. Yes, I do some basic world schools. If there is demand, we will do a separate class for World Schools debate, but I like using the World Schools style. The reason is exactly what Mr. Harrison talked about before. If I have 9 students, or let's say I have 8, but 1 or 2 students are missing, World Schools allows 3 to 5 students on a team. So I can take the class and divide them up and do a World Schools round if I'm missing debaters or if I have too many debaters. So World Schools is a wonderful, flexible format, and it's also fun. Students really enjoy doing some basic, I don't do really intensive World Schools, I do some basic World Schools. I really do love and support World Schools debate, it's great fun. Is the age of 14 too late to start? Absolutely not. I've actually had juniors and seniors in high school take foundations. And it's perfectly fine. Sometimes they get in another class or 2, but it is okay. I've had students who have never taken debate in high school. Maybe they don't have a team. They have no opportunity to take debate in their school. And so they start as juniors or seniors, and they turn out and they do debate in college as a result of taking those classes. I do not believe it's ever too late to start taking foundations classes. Is 7 years old too young to join the elementary class?
I think our youngest was third grader. And however, I would say this, every kid is different, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to start too young, only because they may not understand some of the topics covered during that class. If you believe that your kids have been reading and watching and writing and beyond his age level, then by all means, we can give it a try. But otherwise, I probably will discourage you from doing that.
I think 8 has been our youngest. 8 or 9 has been our youngest so far, I think.
Yes.
But again, it really depends on the student. I've had some 10-year-olds who maybe were a little bit too young to be taking their speech classes. And I can usually figure that out pretty quickly. Again, the elementary class is great fun. So they learn a lot, and they learn a lot of different concepts and even a little about current events as well. For younger kids, what can parents do to prepare them for better communication? I think just giving them confidence, encouraging them to maybe present topics to you. So some of the practical exercises that we'll do in elementary class, as an example, is do an impromptu speech where you convince your parents to give you a bigger allowance or to give you an allowance if you don't have one. So you can encourage them to say, okay, well, give me your best reason as to why I should let you have ice cream after dinner. And just open up an opportunity for them to use basic argument skills and gain confidence and know that they are doing a great job and that they can continue to improve. I think that those are a couple of ideas. I have others, but those are a couple of ideas for really young kids to get them to be prepared. One of my favorite little videos that I show the elementary kids is called Little Chef. And it's this little girl who is 2 years old, and she's cooking, and she does her own little cooking show. And she doesn't know what she's doing, really. She kind of splatters the sauce on there, but she's incredibly confident as she does it. It's fun to watch. And I say, okay, what can we learn from a 2 or 3 year old? You obviously are all older than this. Now let's watch a speech from a 10-year-old. Now let's watch a speech in front of an adult audience from a 14-year-old. This 14-year-old is changing the world by giving speeches on the grand stage. And so we develop your skills out from there. How many times a year do you hold the creative writing class? Our relationship with Viswise is new. And so I would imagine we will offer it as frequently as demand permits and allows. If you feel that the class is full and you'd like to start one earlier, I encourage you to reach out to Viswise and find out about adding another class. We're starting with a set of classes to see how the demand goes and how the students respond, and we'll continue to add more.
Let me jump in here and
sure.
Let me do a little bit of promotion on the creative writing class. A lot of parents prioritize speech and debate class over writing class. And I would say that writing is as important, if not even more important, right? This is, we can debate all night of which is more important. Personally, I feel that you could never get away from writing. No matter what job you take, you can be quiet, you don't want to talk too much, right? But at any job, you have to write. You have to write. So I can't emphasize importance. Before you can be in the final for a scholarship interview, for example, you have to write first. With any call, you have to write first. If you can't even get over that hurdle, you're never going to be in that finalist list. So I would argue saying everybody should take some sort of writing class. You don't have to take it with us although we would be happy if you give us a try.
Mm-hmm.
I can guarantee you that it's going to be very fun.
I am the teacher for the creative writing class. I love the creative writing class. I think it's great fun to teach. The student writing is fantastic, and we can help students submit their writing for competitions. But I love assessing writing. I ran a writing center for my previous institution, and I've worked intensely and personally with lots of different styles of writing, including creative writing throughout my time as an educator at all different levels. The class time doesn't fit. Can I still register? I would not have you register because that takes the time slot for sure. We would only want you to register if you fit that time. However, I would encourage you to contact Viswise and say that time does not work, but I would love to offer a suggestion for a time that might work better, and we'll see if there's sufficient demand from the group. We can advertise additional classes in that WeChat group.
The only exception, let me say, the only exception is the advanced debate class for grade 7 and above.
Yes.
And we intend to have one class, but we already have 14 students sign up for that. We did not stop it because I figured that we're going to divide that into two classes. So you can continue to sign up for that. In a couple of days, we're gonna reach out to you one by one, asking you which time slot is gonna fit you better. We may still have 1 or 2 seats left for that class.
Peng also asked competitive speech class, 7th grader. A 7th grader can certainly take the class. One thing that I would encourage you to consider that may be something to think about with the competitive speech class is that sometimes the materials chosen, especially for dramatic interpretation, may be more advanced for a 7th grader. So if you have a mature 7th grader, I think it'll be fine. You may want to, when we hit the interpretation unit, it may be something that we look to do something as an alternative for that 7th grader. If you think that the content of what is being performed may not be appropriate for 7th graders. So for example, we may have a high school student who talks about racism and maybe violence against particular populations. And you don't want your 7th grader to hear about violent acts verbally told through this dramatic form. So we will talk to the class about what the materials are that are being performed and give the students an opportunity to either step away during those performances or perhaps choose an alternative path when we're focused on that unit. We don't start with that, so we'll build up to that. But that would be my only caution for a 7th grader is about the materials that would be heard in the performance of literature, because some of those materials are going to be very, very sensitive. Not college level, but even the high school level materials can be difficult for certain age groups to hear. Is the 6th through 8th grade foundation course a good fit for a 5th grader? This goes back to if they're a mature 5th grader with a good understanding of the world around them. If you feel like they're pretty solid, ready for 6th grade, then yes, I would encourage that to happen. Is the writing class all students in one level? The initial writing class does not have students from one level. I teach the foundational elements, and then I work with the individual students, and I have a TA for that class, a teaching assistant for that class who also evaluates student writing, so that we can give students a lot of one-on-one attention. I also provide evaluations, individual feedback and evaluations for each piece of student writing in the class. So I work with the students individually because obviously a junior in high school is going to write very differently than the 8th or 9th grader who may be taking a creative writing class. So I think that is a key distinction with the writing class is that individualized component. Which debate form will you teach? The Foundations offers an introduction to a variety of different styles of debate, just so that students have exposure to a variety. Intermediate is focused on public forum, and then advanced, it really depends on the students in the advanced class. If they want to do more advanced level public forum, that's great. Some students transition into novice policy or Lincoln Douglas, and still other students love world schools or parliamentary styles of debate. I will cover those based upon where the class would like the advanced curriculum to go. There is a set of content, however, that is always taught in advanced class, and we always do some advanced level public forum because that's the most popular format and students really enjoy advancing their skill set.
And if I may add, for our current offering of advanced debate class, we will focus more on public forum. However, I know that even though for every class we have detailed schedule to each class, but oftentimes when professor teaches class, he's going to find that this group is different from the other group, so we will make adjustment on the fly. But one thing from personal experience that for parents to consider is that don't pick a debate format because you think that's what the university values, or because you think it's more fancy, more sophisticated. Pick someone that your kids can relate to, because they may not be a professional debater all their life, right? The skill they learned. Give you an example. If your kid is not into policy itself, forcing him to take upon policy debate or even Lincoln Douglas debate, it may not be the best option for your kid, because those topics are not the type of topic you're gonna run into in your daily life. But on the other hand, a public forum is much more accessible, and the topic you debated is probably very relevant for your kid.
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents.
Yep, that's great advice. We're almost finished with the questions. I appreciate your patience. You've given a lot of your time tonight, and I appreciate those of you who have stuck around. But we're almost done with the questions. On average, what would you say is the percentage of teaching versus interaction? I usually start the classes with a lecture, and then we break off into either doing exercises, like impromptu is right away in that first class. And then we do have assignments that they have to complete by the next class. And they need to practice those speeches in advance so that they're ready to go. And then most of the classes are giving speeches, getting some feedback from fellow students and myself, as well as mini lectures. And when I mean mini, I mean about 10 minutes long are the typical instruction periods. And then after a group of speeches, I do another assessment for the class as a whole. And I also do another mini lecture typically. So it's much more interactive than lecture-based, but I do some lecturing of baseline content so that everybody's on the same page. And I introduce terms, I type them into the chat window and make sure that that's covered for the students when I introduce that concept or idea to the class. So it's very high percentage of interaction compared to lecture, for example. Do you correct or give feedback on students' writing? Yes, I do. I give feedback to all of the students after their speeches, and I do give homework to the student and their writing and creative writing classes, and I do give homework assignments. They don't always have to be labor intensive, but students do need to do, especially in debate class, they have to do some research outside of class and bring it with them into class in order to be able to make the class time most productive and beneficial. How many pieces of writing or how many rounds? The creative writing class, you'll walk out with at least 5 pieces of writing. Most of the students will do more than that, and they can do as many revisions as they like. I always offer multiple revision opportunities. Students rarely take me up on that, but I have one student in particular I can think of who rewrote a short story about 5 times so that they could submit it to a contest. And if they make improvements, put forward the effort and improve their writing that significantly, I'm more than happy to dedicate that time to giving that kind of feedback. But I start with a baseline level of feedback, and then if the student shows great work ethic and wants to do rounds of revisions, I'm more than happy to take those on. Will you provide individual feedback and recommendations for next level classes? Yes. I have to figure out exactly how best to transmit that to students. I'm still learning the Viswise system, but I will make sure that I get a summary piece of feedback to all students after the class. That might be through a class WeChat channel. I have to talk to everybody to make sure we're on the same page there, but I do like to give summary feedback for students and parents so that you know what your next steps are, what class might be best for you next, or if it's time for you to be done. It maybe the student is really just wants to focus on piano or clarinet or something else. That is certainly fine too. It's not always for everybody, but I like to give that feedback anyway. And yes, we give the evaluation criteria for each student after the class. Excellent. And then last question, what do your most successful students do differently? Do they practice or read more? Do they have innate talent? No, I think that our students, above and beyond anything else, have a really strong grasp of the foundational concepts, ideas, skills, and research compared to other students at other academies. They get a lot more individual attention. And one of the things that's really important for me is that they have an understanding of values and the role of values within arguments. Just to use an example that we're all talking about right now, and that is the role of masking, vaccinations. Often students want to debate these topics. They hear about masking and vaccinations and they're like, but can we talk about this? Is this too political? I'm more than happy to have good quality debates on those topics. But a lot of it comes down to understanding what the competing values are and where those values lie is really foundationally important. A lot of the debaters that I judge or work with from other academies or just from other schools, when I ask them what's the underlying value to this argument, they have no idea. They were told to run that argument, that it will win, but they don't know why. They just run it. And my students are able to talk about those foundational elements better than students from other camps. That way they can improve upon their debate skills, but also really have a clear understanding of what they're talking about. And if they don't know what they're talking about, we will tell them and say, hey, do you really know what this is? You said you know. Do you really know? No, I really don't know. You're going to have to tell me again. I don't remember. And so we'll talk out those ideas. They do practice, they do read, they do research. I don't think that our students are more talented than others. I think they're willing to put forward the work, but what they do differently is they actually understand what they're debating. And you would be shocked at how many students I will judge a tournament for, and I'll talk to those students and they say, I've just never taught that. I have no idea what you're talking about. And I said, you're an advanced debater, and that's a concept that I teach my beginning debaters, but you've never heard of it before. Why? Because they're taught, well, you do this to win. You run that argument and you don't ask what the argument really means. A senior on the team wrote it or a coach wrote it, and you read that and the other team doesn't know how to respond to it. Hey, you won. The other team didn't respond to it. I don't think that's the most ethical or responsible way to debate. And that's what separates my students from the others, is they actually understand the arguments they're running. I won't let them run an argument if they don't get it. And with that, I see that the questions have come to an end. Probably everybody is very fatigued by now. As you can see, I'm just getting started. I get really excited talking to debaters. I love engaging in these classes and working with students. I certainly hope to see your students in my classes. I look forward to getting to know them and work with them and improving the 5 C's with them. But I'm more than happy to answer additional questions as well. And again, if you want to do an individual assessment, the Viswise folks are more than happy to get you in contact with me so that we can arrange an individual session to find the best fit for your son or daughter. Thank you to Viswise for this and Mr. Harrison, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Harrison for concluding remarks.
Thank you so much for a very informative session, and also for all the parents staying around. I wanted to take the opportunity to do a quick introduction of Sophia. And well, I planned to have her chime in to give us her perspective and personal experience with how communication helped her. But a lot of questions come early, so which is great, by the way. And we had a lot of interactions tonight. But Sophia has over 30 years experience across multiple industries, from public sector to private sector, working as the director for international trade for the state of New Jersey, to Fortune 500 companies stationed in Asia Pacific, working in many different cultures and countries. And you will have a lot of opportunity to work with Sophia and learning from her. So I won't elaborate that, but I believe, Sophia, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like what I experienced in my own career, the communication played a critical role in shaping who you are today as a leader.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, tonight is kind of getting late, but I just wanted to say thank you everyone still stick around. We still have over 100 people. That just means Harrison and Dino, you have a huge attraction for this subject. And thank you very much for presenting great deal, very informative, very valuable information. I learned a lot. I wish I would know you when I was 3. Maybe I will become a president somewhere in a small country or something. But I'm just saying, Harrison, you are so right. Communication is huge, play a huge role in my career in the United States. I was able to use that way in the beginning when I just arrived, knowing, asking what you want. I think I learned one thing is in the United States is you have to ask what you want. Otherwise, nobody will give it to you. So I said communication is one way, one tool for you to do that. Since tonight is kind of late, just welcome all the parents working with WISE. You can scan by this code, join our WeChat group. We can continue with questions, answer your questions, work with you. If time doesn't work, we will try to work with you. So you can see you are in trusted hands. Dino and Harrison both are very experienced in the speech and debate subject. I will be the person working to serve you to make sure you are happy with everything and also logistic. You're in very reliable team. And thank you. I think I wanted to close the floor for today, and we'll continue on dialogue. And thanks again, Dino, and thanks again, Harrison, for your wonderful presentation today. And we will continue our dialogue through WeChat group. And thanks again for everyone joining us for this session today. And we hope everyone learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night. Good night and good day.
Good
Good day in China. Do you want to say something, Ange?
We leave the bar chart here, and every parent who didn't join yet, you can scan. And then Dino and Harrison, wonderful speech, and have a good night. You guys can leave early, but thank you so much. We want to guarantee that first of all, the highlights merge with Visvai is our owner, right? And then we want to make sure that every arrangement will make sure it's seamless, and we'd like every student have a good experience. So we were not going to add you complication, but we'll add evaluation. We'll help you advance to next stage with Professor Page and Harrison and also Sophia's help. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Angie.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angie.
Everybody, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
我们把这个 Sophia 那个爸在
好 Got it.
Yeah, you guys
Okay.
can leave that a little bit in case people wanted to scan.
Got it.
Yeah, you guys can leave. Some parents might because we have a special group, all the question. 如果大家有问题可以进这个群啊，然后进这个群已经早就满200个人了，所以要先加一下这个小助手。加小助手的话，你就说一下答辩，他就会把你拉到这个群里面。那么这个就是我们海域沟通学院，我们专门是Communication Academy 海域Communication Academy。So everyone can join this WeChat group. I think that Dino, you also have a WeChat too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but we want to make sure that your time already spent on, good. Every parent you wanted to make appointment to evaluation, please come through our system first.
Yes.
Consider, professor is very busy and many students.
Yes.
Now you guys can leave. Yeah, we can.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks again.
All right. Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Bye. 那Sophia， 那我先去开会，你们要不要待2分钟，看看大家还没有，然后就然后就
好的，
谢谢啊，辛苦了。
好的，好 ，Good night。
1分钟吧，11点15，好吧，谢谢啊。
好的，还没有扫这个 barcode 进群的，欢迎家长继续添加我们这个思慧的小助手。